Here, welcome to this week's edition of Military Trailblazer Office Hours. Thank you for taking the time out of your Wednesday evening to spend it here in the spirit of community mentorship and learning. I'm your co-host, Dave Albright. You can see Dave Knob on there as well. We're both lead solution engineers at Salesforce and Military Trailblazers. Each week, we invite co-hosts or co-hosts to take part in the conversation so we can leverage their experience, expertise, and unique perspectives. Focus for tonight's session is exploring professional services career paths at Slalom. So, a lot of you on the hiring our heroes path and coming to entry, this is a good one to listen to. If you ever wondered what it's like to work in professional services as a premier global consulting firm or what Slalom's culture is like, this is an excellent session for you. Let me stop screen sharing. Is Cobey in yet, or are we just running without?
Nope, I'm here.
Oh, good. Thank you. Welcome, Cobey. So I'd like to take a time now that we got everyone in, welcome and briefly introduce our co-host panel for tonight's session. We've got Cobey, Maynard, Derek Scott, and Megan Tuano. Cobey is the Senior Delivery Principal Solution Architect at Slalom. He's been in the tech industry since 2015, holding various positions in sales, consulting, operations management, technical project management, solution architecture. Cobey's a veteran of the United States Marine Corps and is a volunteer mentor at Rutgers Business School. Derek is a 6X Salesforce certified associate consultant at Slalom. He's also a certified Scrum Master and a Capado certified. Derek served in the U.S. Army for 6.5 years, and he now mentors service members, veterans, and spouses in his free time on Veterati, an online mentoring platform. Lastly, we have Megan. She's a 5X Salesforce certified associate consultant at Slalom. She's an expert author at salesforceben.com, military spouse, founder and creator of Salesforce Professionals Discord server, and runs her own YouTube channel speaking of Salesforce and lifestyle content to inspire others during their journey. So I want to take a chance to say thank you all for coming and co-hosting with me. It would be great if you'd like to take a moment and introduce yourselves further and share your Salesforce stories. Cobey, would you like to lead us off?
Yeah, sure. It's a pleasure to be here. So first of all, thank you for having us. This is something that's been on our radar for a while. Can you guys hear me just fine, or should I turn this up a little bit?
Nope, sounding good.
All right, awesome. So I've been around the Salesforce industry really since 2018. So it's been a pretty quick ride for me overall. Started out in business operations, and we leveraged Salesforce to solve many problems as a venture-backed software startup. That's really where I fell in love with the platform and just kind of leveraged it moving forward from there. Moved into consulting specifically on Salesforce with a company called MTOH Group, where I focused solely on the public sector, and then moved over here at Slalom a little bit less than a year ago. So it's been a lot of fun. Like you said, I'm a United States Marine Corps veteran. My first consulting gig was as a United States Marine Corps veteran, I was active duty at the time, actually. And I was in charge with revamping my entire MOS, the way that we ran our business operationally. So that was like the first introduction to my passion, which is now software consulting and efficiencies and process improvements.
Good, thank you. How about Megan?
Sure. So again, I'll just echo Cobey. Thank you so much for having us here today. I actually heard about Salesforce when I was working as an end user, as an admissions counselor at UC Berkeley. We were using Classic at the time, so it was not fun working with admission students in that process. But my uncle worked for Capgemini, introduced me to Salesforce, and then fast forward a year ago, actually started with Derek in our Salesforce cohort, and came in as an associate consultant, and since then been working on mainly Pardot projects, and also just launched a Flow 201 course for the incoming HOH individuals that come into the program, but also overall Salesforce residency program. So excited to be here.
All right, thank you. Derek.
Hey, everybody. Third time's a charm. I echo Megan and Cobey. Thank you very much for having me. I've been following Military Trailblazer office hours since I started looking into Salesforce back in 2021. So it's a pleasure to be here with y'all and co-host. My Salesforce journey just started in 2021. I've got a very diverse background, from construction to customer service to Army law enforcement. So why not try out something in the tech field? I had a buddy that I served with that works for the mothership as an engagement delivery manager, told me about this awesome platform where you could switch into tech without having to be a developer right off the bat, and told me I should check it out. So I did, fell in love with Trailhead and the community, the whole ecosystem, and Trailblazer office hours like this one. So I gave it a shot, dug in deep, got a bunch of certs, started a Slalom back in January 2022 with Megan, and just kind of been blazing the trail ever since. I work on a service cloud project, primary service cloud, and omni-channel with the world's leading social networking platform, Meta. And that's where I've been since I started at Slalom. So it's a good time, fun stuff. So thanks again for having us.
Excellent, thank you. For those of us joining for the first time, I always like to briefly explain the purpose of these office hours before you open the floor for questions and discussions. These sessions are an informal get-together for gathering with military trailblazers and allies to explore non-technical Salesforce career and branding-related topics to help you achieve your professional development and career-related goals. The next hour is intended to be an opportunity for collaborative mentorship. Everyone on the call is encouraged to step up and help answer questions from your perspective, which provide additional diversity of experience to the answers given. Please keep an eye on the chat window during tonight's session. I and others on this call share a lot of great information there, including learning, networking, and employment opportunities. If you'd like to ask a question at any point during today's session, please feel free to do so. If you don't feel as comfortable speaking up, you can also post your questions in the chat. We'll do our best to monitor the chat window and also be looking for raised hands. And finally, tonight's session is being recorded. If you'd like to share an attribution-free comment, please let us know before speaking, and we'll make sure it's edited out of the final recording. One thing we also talked about, Dave and I talked early this morning, is we're going to try and weave in, obviously there's been a lot of news coming out of Salesforce with layoffs and things like that. If we were coming into the ecosystem right now, I would have a lot of trepidation and concerns about, wow, what does this mean for me? Am I going to be able to get a job? Are all these people dropping out of the mothership and going to take every entry-level job that's out there? And so I think what we're going to do as we talk and talk about some of these questions, we also want to be cognizant of that and kind of reassure people that, a lot of these people coming out were management, things like that, very technical or have very technical backgrounds who will be scooped up by certain partners. And I can see Cobey kind of shaking his head, Elio shaking his head. They're probably not going to be your competition for entry level. And so as we talk about that, and we talk with Megan and Derek and Cobey, we'll kind of frame some of that and look at how this is going to play out, because the ecosystem is changing and all things change, and we need to kind of look at how that adjusts. So with that, I'll open it up to our panel. Could each of you walk us through a little bit what your roles and responsibilities, activities as part of a professional services team at Slalom, and kind of talk a little bit about professional services, the delivery side, because some of the folks on the line may not really kind of understand delivery versus some of the other sides like pre-sales and things like that. Cobey, why don't you open us up with that, and then we'll pass it around.
Yeah, thanks, David. This is a great conversation to start off with, because consultancies can be very confusing, right? Most people think that I enter Salesforce as an admin or as a business analyst, and I have a very limited career path, and that's just not the case. We've done a really good job, and you'll see this at all the large consulting agencies. We've done a really good job at establishing the career path. It doesn't necessarily mean that's what your functional skill set is on a delivery project, right? And you can explore that based on your interests at the time and really at where you are in your education, growing in certifications and in your education on the platform in general. So traditionally, you'll end up entering as, say, an associate or an associate consultant, and what that does is it gives you a real good foundation to the technological side, and this is speaking directly in delivery, right? And then what that does is we build on your skill sets and your knowledge. We'll make sure that you understand the fundamental basics of Sales Cloud and Service Cloud, and get you comfortable with what does a project look like, and what is Agile methodology, and what is working with a team. And then once you get a little bit of experience there, then you kind of go through a consulting or as a consultant, and then eventually you'll get to a point where you can branch And branching allows you to either go solely delivery. Like I love delivering projects. I love working with clients, and I love, building requirements. And then, depending on whether you're a developer or whether you want to do a solution architect, right? You can focus directly on that. And then some people, they would rather work in the sales side. They would rather work in pre-sales and RFPs and winning deals. And they go more in what we call, it's not the delivery path. It's help me out, Megan. I completely forget the name of it. It is it's a different path, and I'll get that here in a second. But there are two different paths here. And what's really great about Slalom, it's one of the things that I fell in love with at Slalom, is that they cross and they intersect. And if I went delivery, so for example, I'm a senior delivery principal at Slalom, I play the role of solution architect on projects. And so that's how there's that designation there, right? I could also play the role as a Scrum Master, or I could play the role as a solution owner. But my skill set and where I've gather the most value is by playing the role as solution architect, senior solution architect, and being in charge of all of that, right? You could be a senior delivery principal, but you could be a developer, you could be a technical architect. And what's really great about that is that you don't have, it really depends on where you fall in love with your career, right? Some people fall in love with their career, they don't want to go management, they really just want to be a developer, the different levels. And you've seen that, like you go look at salary ranges at Amazon and stuff, you'll see like developer 1 or architect or engineer, SW1 levels, the different levels. But at Slalom, you get those different paths, right? So you have your entry level roles, which are more like your associate consultant, your consultant, then you have like your principal consultant and stuff like that. And then they'll branch out and go more delivery principal, your delivery directors, your delivery VPs, your managing directors, etc. Or you can go the other path, which I'll get accountability path, right? And the accountant capability path. And what that does is that allows you to focus less on delivery and utilization and all of that, and more on the value that we bring to our organizations and our customers through the pre-sales efforts and the RFPs.
Yeah, I think that's a great way of looking at it. Dave and I both came in through delivery side, right? Working with one of the SI partners, system integrator partners. And I will still say that is probably one of the best ways to cut your teeth in the ecosystem, because you learn exponentially. And anyone who has heard me talk on here before, I got my first user story and I literally had no idea what it was. It was do an M-D. And I remember panicking because I was like, I had no idea what a master detail was. So I didn't even know what an MD was. And you just learn so fast, right? And having that background in Agile and understanding Scrum and how that works both theoretically and actually realistically allows you to branch into other things. Like Dave and I doing pre-sales now, we are able to kind of look at the pre-sale side and know what is going to happen to the right side of the sale once it goes passed off to the delivery team. So thanks. Megan, Derek?
Yeah, so to kind of piggyback on a little bit of what Cobey said, the awesome thing about being at Slalom is that there's a difference in title and role, right? So as he said, there's kind of steps: associate consultant, senior, principal, so on and so forth, and then the delivery paths compared to the capability path. But in each one of those titles is a role that you play. So for example, I'm an associate consultant, and I'll tell you guys, it's the first time I'm releasing it publicly, so everybody be prepared to clap. I'm actually up for promotion to consultant starting on Monday. So from associate consultant to consultant in a year at Slalom, I think is a pretty solid track. But anyways, I'm an associate consultant at the moment. But as an associate consultant, I'm the team lead for an Agile project team. So my role is different than maybe Megan's role is as an associate consultant, or somebody else's role as an associate consultant. But to start out, we're all on the delivery path. So while I am a team lead, and a big part of my job is to manage Asana boards and tasks and make sure that there's no project blockers and things like that, I'm also delivering. And basically what that means is that the client needs something, they have a pain in their business process and they need Salesforce to fix it, and I have to figure out how to do that. And as Cobey said, and David said, it is an awesome place to just really, really up your tech chops, because clients will ask you for some crazy stuff and Salesforce can deliver it. We all know how awesome the Salesforce platform is, and it's guaranteed to deliver. So we learn, we Google. That's my best friend is Google, or search the force. Somebody always points that out when I say Google's my best friend. And we learn about it. And I can tell you, in the year that I've been here at Slalom, I went from not knowing what Salesforce was at all to, I believe I'm pretty tech savvy, at least in the Service Cloud space at the moment. So, yeah, it's an awesome place to be, and it's a great track to be on. If you can start in a delivery function, by all means do so, and you probably will. Junior admins, associate consultants, things like that are all going to be some sort of platform specialist role that you take on. And yeah, get into it and ease some client customer pain points, and you'll take off. So it's my day.
Megan, what are your thoughts?
Well, I worked at 2 consultancies before this, one where it was like 5 to 7 projects at a time, and the other where it was like 1 intense project. Oops. So coming into Slalom, we do work with like one, at least for me, I went from the local market in Fort Worth, and then we moved over to California. So now I'm on the global market, pretty much with Derek. I really enjoy the delivery side because, yes, you do have that title of associate consultant. But from the beginning, I've expressed to my manager, and we do have like managers that we work with every like bi-weekly, we meet with them. And what I like about Slalom specifically is that you can tell your manager your goal, and then from there, they'll work with you to be able to be like, oh, okay, well, this role might be better for you, or develop these skills so we can get you into this position, still within the Salesforce space. So a lot of my projects have definitely been Pardot related, which is great, kind of combining it with marketing. But I have expressed to my manager since last year that the interest was more in project management. And along with doing like client work, we've also been able to develop that Flow 201 course, also working with the Salesforce program that helps Salesforce individuals come in to the cohorts that we have. So I think it's really tailored to expressing yourself, and Slalom being really open to saying like, oh yeah, let's definitely help you. And I think that's very different than a lot of other consultancies where it's like, oh, you have to do this and you're expected to become a developer and take this path and this cert and so forth. I've had organizations that come with me with like, you need to take these certifications. And that's just not where I see myself going. So I really do appreciate Slalom for that aspect, for really listening to its employees, regardless, like if you are an associate consultant, you can choose your path and where you want to go.
You just mentioned something that gave me maybe mild flashbacks to delivery. What type of Salesforce projects are you working on? How many are you working on? Because I remember where I worked, I was a half FTE on one project, and then I did like 3 other ones. And that is both awesome and also kept me up at night some nights.
I actually started Salesforce during the pandemic, and that's when we were like, my first consultancy, balancing 5 to 7 projects, and kind of like not knowing really, like, Salesforce when you take the test, but if you don't have that hands-on knowledge, you're kind of like, what am I doing? So that was definitely really intense, along with dealing with like the mental part of the pandemic. So coming into Slalom, what I really, really, really do like is that there's a big focus on like professional development. So like if you wanted to get Scrum certification or another Salesforce certification, you can do that, and they support you, and they also give you like the materials to be able to do that. At Slalom specifically, I work with 1 to 2 projects at a time. Right now it's 1 that's ending. So sometimes you might be on the bench, and that was way different than other consultancies because it's like go, 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 go. Here it's more, you feel more relaxed. You definitely do have that work-life balance that they really kind of tell you at the beginning, which I was hesitant about speaking with the recruiter at first last year. Derek, I don't know if you had the same experience where they're like, yeah, I have a work-life balance. I'm like, is that true? But it's very true.
Yeah, for me, I came from a different consulting agency, and what you'll find is in the consulting world, there's different value props that consulting agencies bring to the table, right? The very large organizations like your Deloitte, your Accentures, your Slalom, a lot of the times it's experience, it's being thorough, it's that knowledge that they bring to the table, the best practices and the resources. Then you'll also find that there are consulting agencies that bring speed, right? Their claim to fame or their value is the ability to deliver very quickly. And in order to do that, they have either very large teams. Offshore is a very big part of the speed, so that way you can work around the clock for consulting agencies. But a lot of the times you'll work on multiple projects at a time. So before this, I came over, I was working 90-hour weeks, running the New York City program, where we were running anywhere between 4 to 5 projects at a time, and that was average. And the big reason that I moved over to Slalom is because I had a brand new baby at the time, and it's just very difficult. And I woke up one morning and I had a panic attack, and I was like, okay, I can't do this anymore. But I love delivery, so I have to find a balance. And I was super lucky to find the balance here at Slalom. I was very apprehensive when they told me we generally work on one project at a time. Because going from multiple projects at a time to one, for me in particular, there was a very big mental shift that went into that. It's like, now I'm delivering all of this value, but am I a fraud coming over to Slalom because I'm not working so hard in consulting? And so it took me a long time to get over that hurdle and understand that the value that I bring to a project or a team or a product is not derived solely on the amount of hours that I put in, right? And sometimes you can bring a more valuable product to market for a team or for a client if you don't have 3 or 4 other things that are pulling at your attention. And so I think that's one of the great things that Slalom's been able to find a balance on, is the ability to not overwork your team, right? To a point that they're not able to deliver effective value, and still be able to focus on career growth and all the things that you would expect not to be able to focus on in a high value consulting agency.
And I think that is a key point, right? Is the size of the team has a lot to do with it. But as a consultant in a delivery team, you live or die by how much you have in backlog, right? Mm-hmm. That is business. And you have to keep that perfect amount in there. So you need that business development out there, keeping things stocked in that backlog, right? Just like a magazine ammunition, you got to be feeding it. And it's tricky, right? Because you don't want to overwork your people and run them into the ground. But the flip side of that is, if you don't have enough backlogged for them, then they're sitting on the bench. And so we got a couple questions, and I'll hit the bench one first since I just brought it up. And then Derek, I'd like to hear your thoughts as well. Carrie asked, what do you typically do when you're on the bench, right? We just talked about if there's no workload, if you run out of projects, what do you do?
I unfortunately, well, I don't want to say unfortunately, I don't have personal experience with this question. I haven't been on the bench. I've been staffed on the project since I started. But I do know from coworkers and other people on the team, Slalom's real focused on your personal and professional growth. There's internal projects. We ourselves have an internal Salesforce org that benched people can get on those teams and work in the internal org. Also, other enhancements as far as we've got a Me at Slalom platform that some of our folks will work on to enhance. But then really, I think Megan dropped it in the chat. Just so everybody knows, I would respond in chat too, but it doesn't work for me for some reason. It tells me it's not available. But I think Megan dropped it in the chat that it's real big personal professional development. So take some study time, get a couple certs, start drilling into something you're interested in, and it's totally supported and it's encouraged and it's welcomed in our environment.
Yeah, I think that's great.
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Megan.
I was benched for 3 months, and that's kind of why I went from the local market at Fort Worth. The local market depends a lot on the organizations and the companies in the area. But with everything that happened last year, they had to out-resource us. So there is what Derek was talking about, like a place where you can go in and be like, these clients globally are looking for Salesforce consultants. One thing that I really did notice was that there's a specific niche wanted. So like after you get your admin, your platform builder, sales or service, it's really important to use that time if you are bench to be able to niche yourself and stand out. Because that's definitely one way that you can go from being noticed on the bench. You can go longer sometimes on the bench, you can go shorter. It just depends on what's available, but rough market right now.
Yeah, and I think, and Cobey, I see your hand. There are, and Salesforce Ben has definitely been posting some articles on this too. There's definitely some niches that are getting a little more in demand right now. Industries, Omni, Marketing Cloud is really up there. CRM Analytics is up there. So trying to get skilled up in those to keep yourself marketable. Go ahead, Cobey.
Yeah, so local market and global market may be confusing terms for some people that just don't understand what we're talking about, right? In general, consulting agencies, from what I've understood and based on my experience, most consulting agencies don't staff a project solely based on where the client's location is. A lot of agencies will staff based on capacity. So, for example, if I have a developer out of California, but my client's out of the East Coast, it doesn't really matter as long as there's capacity and alignment. I'm going to staff my developer on an East Coast project. Slalom has a methodology where we represent our clients, essentially meaning that our project teams represent the locations and the everything that about our clients. And so we try to staff from local markets. And so we have these major local markets, in the Northeast, the East, et cetera, Hartford, Connecticut, New York City, like down in the South in Texas, Austin, Houston, et cetera. So we have local markets that essentially where we have teams of professionals that primarily staff the projects for those markets. Now, the global team, which is what I'm also a part of, is a supplementary aspect to that, meaning that if, for example, my last project was a customer out of Alabama. And what I did was I stepped in because they didn't have any senior solution architects that were available in the local market. So they reached up to our global market and they said, hey, do you have a resource or two that you could shoot our way? And so I was able to staff on that project. And so when you join the global team at Slalom, you get a little bit more variety around who you can staff with and where you can go. But the local markets, generally, if you're staffed in the New Jersey market, for example, where I'm actually located, you're predominantly going to be working with New Jersey clients. So that's what we mean when we're talking about local versus global. So just wanted to clear that up.
No, I think that's excellent. And you mentioned offshore too, right? Things to think about as a consultant is how do I keep maximum coverage, especially if it's a support contract, right? Where I can start on the East Coast, roll it to the West Coast, and then roll it offshore. You can get 8 hours of coverage on a customer. Let's roll back. Amber had a question. I've seen more certifications in Agile, Jira, and Scrum. Is this valuable training for a junior admin to get to set themselves apart coming into the ecosystem? Anyone want to take that? I've got some thoughts, but I'll let you guys go.
So I actually just replied to a Reddit comment about something similar to this. And I would say it really depends on your goals, but yes and no. More certifications does not mean you're more valuable. What it does, though, it does give you the opportunity to showcase your value. This sort of will, at least this response will sort of also coincide with the mass Salesforce layoffs, and does that, make it more competitive as a market? And, this is a bad time to get into Salesforce. Absolutely not, right? At Salesforce in particular, you're not going to have Salesforce administrators that are going to flood the market. Generally, the way that it works is Salesforce is not filled with a bunch of Salesforce admins, right? Salesforce is filled with a bunch of HR and salespeople. They sell a product. Then they have a professional services team, and then they have a support team, right? Hundreds of thousands of companies use Salesforce. I don't know if everybody knows that, but every single company that does use Salesforce needs Salesforce professionals to do their job. And if they don't, what we've seen a lot, especially in consulting, that's why we have a consulting industry, is because not everybody can staff real-time, full-time the product teams needed to run their Salesforce environments. And so, you have a lot of opportunity when it comes to Salesforce administration and development and even BAs to drive a lot of value when it comes to Salesforce. And those certifications like Jira, Scrum Master, et cetera, they get you your foot in the door to be a little bit more valuable on those teams, right? And so, if you want to go into delivery, Scrum Master certifications are great. They're not required. You can learn a lot about Agile, either personal personal development going online and stuff like that, or just through project work. And every company does Agile differently. So don't expect Agile to be Agile everywhere, right? You're going to go one place, they're going to call it Agile. It's going to be waterfall. And if these words are confusing, it's totally okay. But just know that it's really going to be a learning experience. I would say, yes, they're valuable to get your foot in the door. They're not ultimately more valuable than project work or experience or projects.
Yeah, and let me flip that from and we've talked about this here on Office Hours before, from a consultant perspective, from the actual consultancy's perspective, what are your thoughts on certificates? And I probably know where this is going. I'm leading the
certifications drive value for consulting agencies because they give you more ammunition for Salesforce to reach out, because essentially it's like, I have one partner here who has 10,000 certifications, and then ambiguous numbers, right? 10,000 certifications. I have another partner here that has 8,000 certifications. On paper, who looks better, right? And there are tiers as a partner at Salesforce that are based on certifications and completed projects and CSAT scores and stuff like that. So yes, certifications absolutely drive value. They're a good way of showcasing that you have experience. So like if you have project experience and a certification to go along with that, that to me is so much more valuable than just a certification or even just project experience, right? Like it's applied, applied learning, if you will. And so, for example, I'm like seven or eight times certified. I don't really keep track. I'm not a huge certification hoard. I did go through and get 4 certifications in 4 weeks this past certificate. They do Salesforce days at Salesforce, which is a 3-week or a 3-month period where they basically push their partners to get as many certifications as you can, and they give you discounts on the certification costs and all of that. But I did get 4 certifications in 4 weeks, but that's just because I had project experience on all of that, and I was lazy in getting my certifications. And so I don't think certifications derive a whole lot of value, but when you align them with projects and experience, that speaks to your ability to deliver your understanding and your fundamental knowledge.
Yeah, and I think Andrew Kearns just asked a question about this as well. What do you recommend after admin cert for federal market at VA DoD, if this is not too simple a question? And what I was leading into that question for Cobey is certain certs have different point value. And I think that still holds true today. I don't think that changed when we changed the tiers. Like the consultants are worth about 3 points each. Admin, advanced admin are about 1 point each. I think architects are 10 points, 15 points each, something like that. And so they end up tallying up for your consultancy as some aggregate number, and that works towards your tier level. And so knowing that, and you can research it, you can Google it, and I'm pretty sure it still holds true. Knowing that, you can kind of start to kind of look at what certs. Does my cert that I'm going for work for me professionally and personally, and does it also work for the consultancy? Because if those all jive together, you're probably on a good path. And you may not be, right? It may be, no, I want to be a CRM analytics expert. I really like analytics. And that may not be worth the points, but that's what you want to do personally. But just having that knowledge, right? Information's power, the whole point of coming here to office hours and sharing this kind of stuff and talking about it. So anyway, that's what I wanted to kind of talk about there. Let's see, we're pretty much just over the halfway point. So we're at the midpoint of our session. So let's go ahead and get a group photo for sharing on social media. Always want to be branding, so go ahead and take your cameras off. We'll post this on LinkedIn and Twitter tomorrow. We'll tag everyone in the photo. If you only have your first name showing in the Google Meet and want to be tagged, please feel free to include your full name in the chat window. And for everyone who wants to participate in the photo, please unmute your photo and grab a screenshot. And if you could hold off on comments there, just so I can grab the shot. And I'll try and give you a countdown, but I'm horrible at this. And of course, someone logs in right as I try and get it. All right, get set and go. All right, looks like I got it. I always end up looking up to the top left. And we're good. All right, Elio, go ahead.
Yeah, I don't have much of a question, more so of a comment. I hear from different folks that reach out to want to learn about Salesforce. And I appreciate the discussion today because some of these projects require speed and knowledge, more so knowledge, but at a fast pace. And other roles, like some of the consultants that I worked with when I was out in the field, you were almost part of the internal team, right? And you were there for quite a long time to more so manage the platform and maintain it rather than do what these folks here are talking about, where you really you're paid for to come and do either a project or an implementation, and time to value, right? Client has spent a lot of money in the licenses and they want their people to start using it. So I just wanted to share that and why I think it's important for folks to understand the different types of roles that are out there, because I've done them all except for these high speed consultants that we have here today. You guys are rock stars, and I was fortunate. I worked out in the field before all of these certs came about, and there was that need to speed, right? We're talking when Salesforce maybe had like 5,000 employees. So nowadays, because of the cost of the platform, people need to start using the platform that much quicker. So it's great to hear the insight about what everybody on the call has done that's in the panel today. So thank you for sharing your comments.
Of
Thank you,
course. I
Elliot.
will say, though, it's more about the value the platform brings than the cost, right? Because
Well said.
with the digital transformation that we've seen since COVID, people have realized the value that the Salesforce platform in total can bring. And that's, to me, what's driving the adoption. That's what's driving this speed, because they're understanding that companies can gather or make more efficient processes that were previously, a hindrance to their ability to grow. And
Right.
that's ultimately what we're seeing now. Is we're seeing the light bulb go off and people realizing there's something amazing here. And that's why all of that's why there's a flooded market, not a flooded market. That's why there's a flood or a rush to market for people and professionals that are needed, because there's so much value that can be brought from the platform.
Yep.
Yeah, and I'll add one point in there, and we brought it up, and Iris kind of put it in there too. We have, as last count, I think I've seen on marketing, is over 150,000 customers are using Salesforce, right? Their business processes are deeply interwoven with Salesforce. Salesforce had some unfortunate news last week with some layoffs and, the restructuring the organization, but those businesses are going to keep on going. Even if Salesforce basically stopped tomorrow, their business processes are still interwoven. They're going to still renew those licenses. And they, like Cobey said, you have a need for admins. You have a need for people to config. You have a need for some of these bigger ones who are doing custom work for developers. So go ahead, Iris, and then I'll get back to some of these questions because I'm running a little behind.
Oh, I'll be really quick. I just want to say great lineup today. And I just wanted to tack onto your points that, yes, things are a little shaky and everything. And a lot of our usual host companies who participated in our fellowship didn't open their doors this time. They just wanted to see how things were going to go this year. But we've just launched our first orientation day today, and we have over a third of the companies who've joined us are brand new Salesforce host companies who are participating. So I think it just shows that the market is growing, and I'm just sharing to say, don't listen to all the noise, that it is still pretty good.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, in economic uncertainty, companies react to that, right? We've got to think about it. This is the first time in tech history that tech has taken a downturn, right? I mean, the tech industry has been on a abnormal rise forever. So companies are nervous, and that in turn makes job seekers, transitioners, people breaking into the ecosystem nervous. But Salesforce is such a powerful platform in a way that what it does for companies is it embeds in the company. Like, I can tell you the project that I'm on, if we were just to reach into the computer today and snatch Salesforce out, it would fall apart. I mean, they wouldn't be able to manage candidates or recruits or employees or offers or anything. I mean, the whole system would fall apart without Salesforce. So that's not going to go anywhere. They're not going to slowly back out of it, because honestly, they just can't without jumping back into spreadsheets that aren't feasible. So they're going to remain out there. It's tough. I know there's some people on the call that have been affected by the Salesforce layoffs or the industry layoffs, and my heart goes out to you. And you know just as well as I do that when one door closes, another one opens, and there's still plenty of roles out there. So I don't want, especially newcomers, to start, getting shook up and nervous, thinking they chose the wrong career path, because it's an amazing one, and it's definitely still in use and will continue being in use. So.
Yeah, great point. And the ecosystem has kind of risen up too. It's been impressive to watch LinkedIn over the last week. I mean, it's just nonstop of reach out. We've got jobs, I've got contacts who are, and what we'll actually see from this is really a cross-pollination of Salesforce folks in the ecosystem now going into other companies and kind of spreading that wealth and increasing the network, right? Dave Nava, always be branding. And so you're seeing this in action right now. It's unfortunate, right? And it's come with a pretty big hit, and it's made the whole ecosystem a little nervous, but in essence, you're seeing that network in action. So back to local markets and global markets. If you're currently hired on the local office, but really local market, how do you transition to the global team? Do you find a role on the global team, or you just kind of move around?
You have to wait a year. That's what I was told when starting at the local market, because going global and being able to travel and move around was like in our plan. So you do have to be able to wait a year and see if there is a specific opening in the market that you're planning on going to. So for example, even though we're in like the middle of California, our closest office is San Diego. So that's about like 2-3 hours away, away from us. But that's how you're like positioned, wherever your zip code is to the closest market. But that's if you're going to the local market, like where Cobey is for his office. But if you're going to another global market, that just has to wait a year too. And then you can transition in if they have an opening again.
Right. And you probably apply for that or request it.
Yes. Yeah. And you have to go to your manager.
Yeah, it's a formal divisional change, right?
Yeah.
So, you have to, for example, I was trying to hire somebody out of the Boston area, but she was about to move to Houston. And obviously there wouldn't have been the ability there, because even though like I'm on the global team, but I'm with the local New Jersey market, meaning that that's my home base, right? Those are my people. The global team means that like your teammates and your boss and basically all your teammates don't have a specific regional or a specific regional market that they do business with. They're able to do business all over. But the way that it works at Slalom is, even if you're on the global team, you're assigned your local market. That is like your home, right? So if I wanted to go into the office, I could go into New Jersey and I could go and meet all the New Jersey people and see my local New Jersey team. I might not work with them on projects, but those are my people, right? So yeah.
Okay. Let's see. What's our next one here? From Melissa. It sounds like it's easier to get certs once you're working and getting project experience. What certs get your foot in the door at Slalom?
I can take that. It really depends on how you're coming on. If you're really just a entry-level career transitioner, never done Salesforce really at all in the past, we have a great residency program. That's what Megan and I are on currently. And really, I don't believe there's even a requirement for a cert to get hired on. Of course, it always helps when you have the admin cert or a BA cert or associate or whatever the case may be. But there's no real requirement to get on board. Also, with that comment or that question, with what you said, I can 100% back the fact that it's much easier to get a cert once you've got project experience or hands-on experience. I can tell you most of my certs I've strictly studied for in Trailhead, and I've taken almost the entire whatever allotment of minutes they give us, 100 and whatever minutes. I've worked in Service Cloud since I started at Slalom, and when I took my Service Cloud consultant certification, it took me like 32 minutes, I think. And that was strictly because I work on it all day, every day, from sun up to sundown. So, yeah, I mean, do what you can to showcase, right? When you're coming into anywhere, including a company like Slalom, you're coming in with competition, right? Or you're applying with competition. For every one role, there's 10, 20, 50, 100 applicants, right? So you want to try to stand out as much as possible, whether that be soft skills or background, career experience, or certifications. So while there may be no requirement, I would recommend an admin cert, and maybe even a BA cert or something like that, but definitely an admin cert would help to have you stand out a bit.
Yeah, I think an admin is kind of like that. I don't know. To me, it's that base level one you need to get in there to kind of show.
Yeah.
And it's a rough one to take, because like you said, you usually don't have any experience in it. And so, and like to your point, Service Cloud consultant, until you've actually worked with omnichannel or CMS or knowledge, trying to take that test is emotional. You're like, I don't even know what they're talking about. You're just trying to plod through the questions.
Crying.
And then the first time yeah, I mean, crocodile tears coming down. But then once you've done it a couple of times, you're like, oh man, this makes a lot more sense. And then you still realize you don't know even the top of the iceberg on that one.
Absolutely.
Carrie looks like she's trying to get a little OJT here. Favorite tools you use for Chrome add-ons, apps, etc., to support your role and/or projects?
Yeah, I responded Inspector and Notion. I think those are the two. Inspector, because if you don't know what Salesforce Inspector is, just here's a fair warning. Fair warning, you can do a lot of damage with Salesforce Inspector. So know what you're doing. Know what you're doing. But if you know SOQL, which is the search object query language, right? Which is essentially Salesforce's ability to query and ask questions and gather information. And if you want to do any data manipulation, Salesforce Inspector will streamline your process so fast. I was able to load. The reason that I fell in love with it is I had to do a training environment once where I had to load 7.5 million records. I had to generate, and it was a multi-table relational thing, and it had to be done within like 36 hours. And I was able to accomplish it because of Salesforce Inspector within 12 hours. If it wouldn't have been for Salesforce Inspector and my ability to like insert query, update very, very quickly, it would have taken so long. So Salesforce Inspector has been by far my favorite tool to find. There's also Salesforce Organizer. So if you're working in multiple environments, that's a very good one. Google, one thing that I'll have to point out, Google's grouping feature, color coding your tabs and your groups, is another big thing, because if you get lost in environments, for example, you have your dev environment open and your UAT environment, your production environment, you don't want to accidentally do things in your production environment. So leveraging those. And then for me personally, is upskilling my own internal processes and my own systems is Notion. And I can speak to that for days.
I don't know Notion, but Inspector for sure. I've done hot extracts and loads off of SOQL queries into live production. Like, what's that old joke? Like, I don't test often, but when I do it in production. Salesforce colored favicons is another good one too, because it automatically colors all your clouds that you have. So any orgs you have open, it'll match the colored icon on them. I'll have to look up Notion. Anyone else have thoughts on extensions?
Show Salesforce API is a good one. I use it a lot. It's awesome because if you know Salesforce, you know you have fields, have the label name, and then it's got an API, which is the backend name of it. So name _ whatever. And if you use the Show Salesforce API, you click the button on whatever record page you're on, and it'll show the label and then the API name right underneath it. And that way you don't have to jump to your setup and object manager to try to find those. It's helped a bunch, saved me a bunch of time.
Yeah, the first time you chase an API name that is not even remotely close to the actual label,
Oh yeah.
and you chase that for a couple hours, and you're like, there's got to be an easier way. Megan, you got any thoughts?
I couldn't unmute, sorry. I think Cobey and I, like the first day we spoke, we both like went on about Notion forever. Notion is free, collaborative, and customizable, which I think is super like just nice to have. You can have pictures in it, time, like anything that you want, and it's very organized. And I use it for all of my client tickets just to be able to keep it in there. So Notion.
Ooh, I have to look that one up. And Nitin, you said Workbench, developerforce.com. That's Workbench has been a good one, yeah. Kind of, it seems like it's dying out a little bit, but still very capable and very, anything you can get Sockwell faster is usually a good thing. Once you figure out the power of Sockwell, you're like, all right.
Yeah, VS Code too is another thing, right? Like I think if you're going to go technical, understanding the Salesforce CLI and the power of being able to move things in between environments very quickly. I know that Salesforce just dropped, just dropped their DevOps tool, DevOps Center, right? I've been away from Slalom for a while. I'm on a leave of absence for now, voluntary. Don't worry. So but yeah. So VS Code is another one. Learn the power. If you're going to go technical, and this is really, you don't really need to know this as a BA or just as an admin, but if you're going to go technical, learn the CLI because it'll streamline things so quick.
Yeah, CLI.
VS.
Go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was just saying VS Code is huge for configs also. I have VS Code. I pull metadata from the org like twice a week, and it allows me to search for anything, stuff that you can't normally search for or find easily, like where something is in a flow. You can search it in VS Code. It's a powerhouse tool to use.
Is it just me though, or does it spend like the first 4 days when you set up your VS Code trying to figure out the right color combination? I'll spend like hours on that.
It's a rabbit hole.
Hours and hours. Yeah, man, you're just like, I don't know. What about this midnight one? This one's awesome.
Which theme is coolest?
But when you do pull your metadata over into VS Code, right, and you actually start looking at it and you see what a field looks like in metadata, your understanding of how Salesforce works. Now that's at the uber nerd level, but you really get an understanding of what's going on behind the scenes when you start to get in and pull it and start to look at what Salesforce looks like really underneath the hood.
Yeah.
All right. Have I missed any questions? Let me look here. If not, I want to talk about like the culture of Slalom, right? Because each consultant has a different culture, and if you guys could elaborate on that and kind of talk about it, feel free.
I'd love to jump in with a real quick story, and then Cobey and Megan means. The culture of Slalom is amazing, right? And I say this because every company will tell you to be authentic and bring your authentic self, and they have such a friendly culture and this and that. Not every one of them is necessarily being completely honest with that. It's like a sales tactic. Well, if you're looking at the video, you can see here that I've got gigantic gauged ears. I've got tattoos everywhere. So when I was on the phone with the recruiter in the very beginning, he was asking me, do you want to be, are you looking for a functional consultant or a technical consultant? First of all, I didn't know what that meant at all. So I was like, well, I don't know. I said, functional sounds like it'd be very client facing. I said, so maybe the technical route, because, gauged ears, tattoos, you may not want, somebody that's not suit and tie in front of the clients. And he literally laughed on the phone. Once he could catch his breath after cracking up, he said, no, man, we want you to bring your authentic self, and we mean it. And boy, do they. I have never been judged or talked to or looked down on by anybody from Slalom or any clients that I've interacted with or anything for my appearance or being authentically me. And I am boisterous and loud and fun. So the culture is amazing, and all the stuff you hear about Slalom is absolutely true, except the negative stuff. Don't believe any of that. But the culture is amazing, and they really mean what they say when they talk about being an awesome place to work.
That's really great to hear. Megan, Cobey?
Megan, you want to go?
Sure. I would say that, starting off at the beginning of the year, and I was unemployed for 4 months trying to find a job, and then Slalom came into the picture. Everything that the recruiter said, I was like trying to pinch myself. Is this real? Is she like serious? Just being your authentic self, that's who they want to hire. And I was actually trying to put that in the chat, Melissa. Sorry about that. But Slalom hires you. Of course, they hire you because of who you are. They want to see who you are, and they want to have that represented with their clients, with their people. And at the end of the day, I will say Slalom goes above and beyond to make sure that you're taken care of professionally, but also personally. Like, I just had to take medical leave unexpectedly. The whole entire team took over, no questions asked. People leader, which is also a manager, was super supportive. And I really just don't think that, especially in the tech space, you really can't find that elsewhere. So to say at the end of the day, Slalom feels like home and fun and friends. Yeah, that's exactly just how it feels.
Yeah, so I don't say this to be cocky. I had 4 offers on the table when I was evaluating Slalom. And at the moment, all it took was me to have one conversation with one person, and the decision was pretty much made at that point in time. I was very, like I said, I was very apprehensive at first. All I wanted out of a career, or out of a job or a career at Slalom, was to be on a top performing team. And they have literally exceeded all of my expectations. I have a very high bar for myself when it comes to my professionalism and my career, and the speed and all of that. And Slalom has done nothing but raise my bar, and I couldn't really ask them for more than that. And the teammates have always been great. I echo everything that Megan and Derek said. Like, it's, be who you are, have fun doing it, and and we deliver value. That's pretty much what it comes down to.
And that's really great to hear, because a consultant, I don't have a lot of experience in delivery. I was in there for like about a year or so. And I speak very highly of the one I came from. But I also know from working with partners, they can be a grinder, right? Like I said, you gotta turn out product, right? And you can really wear down your horses quickly. And so having that culture where they take care of you and keep a focus on work-life balance, right? So you don't burn out, you're stable. It's very important. It's really awesome to hear. Question for Derek and Megan: can you share the link info for the residency program? And a follow-on question, Giuliano asked about travel expectations for local and global teams earlier. That's obviously a big discussion now, work from home.
Yeah, so I hit that one. In consulting, travel is a reality, right? You're going to have to go on site at times, specifically at specific phases of a project is more likely, right? So your requirements gathering phase or early on, collaborative workshops tend to be best in person, especially if the client is is an in-person shop, as well as sometimes during like specific areas of testing and training and go lives. Every role has its own requirements of up to, right? So I think for my particular role, they said it was like up to 25%, but I've only had to go on site once, or I've only gone on site 3 times, all of which were voluntary, right? So what we do is we try to set the expectations with the client. We're a remote first company, unless it makes sense to go on site, and if it does, we usually staff via local projects anyway. So it's not like you're traveling across the nation to a client for 2 weeks while we're doing UAT. A lot of the times you're staffed on a project that is within your state or within your region, and it's you're able to go out and back. I don't want to say that definitively, but that's the way that we try to approach projects and staffing and travel.
No, I think that's good to hear. I mean, you got to do sometimes what you got to do, and there's no substitute for in person, even with the work from home and like my nerd battle station here with multiple monitors and cameras and everything like that. There's still nothing like being right there in person. Derek, Megan?
With all that being said, I do agree that in person, there nothing beats in person. However, depending on, I know we're out of time, so I'll try to be quick. Depending on where you're at in the company also determines that, right? The E&O team or the residency team that Megan and I are on, our contracts are actually sold with no in-office travel. So we are completely 100% remote. As long as I'm on this team, I'll never be required to to travel. I mean, I'm sure there may be an exception somewhere if somebody really, really wants you on site, but even then, I'm not sure how it would be handled because we sell the contracts as 100% remote. So it kind of depends where you're at in the company. And then for a forward-facing residency link, I'll try to find one and I'll pass it on to one of the Davids. I don't know if I've ever seen like an external link to one, but if there is, we'll find it and pass it on for everybody.
Yeah, thank you. And before we close, I'd like to thank Cobey, Derek, Megan for co-hosting tonight's session, taking the time out of your days, and coming out of the consultant and working with us. It's been awesome having you here and getting your perspective on the topics we discussed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
It's been a pleasure. If there are any further questions, don't hesitate to reach out. We're here.
Absolutely.
Yep, we've all got your LinkedIn. We got them in the post. With that, thank you so much for attending. Hope to see you next week and have a great Wednesday night.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Team.
Take care.